Thank you, Wei-Huan. Your message came in right on time. If you say, sir, I won't do it. Nope, I did not say you should stop doing it. I did not say you should continue doing it. I think you have to decide and see when will it be appropriate. He hasn't bring up the big guns yet. Okay, all right. As long as it's not disruptive, I think we are fine. So we will be going through the life cycle, and I think it's important for you to then see and understand that every technology has its own life cycle. Yeah, every technology that we're going to discuss about will reveal its own level of a life cycle of what is it going through currently. So understanding the context of life cycle, looking to the importance, categorizing the 4 distinct stages. So overall, there is, when you're discussing about the life cycle itself, there are 4 distinct stages, but there is another model that I'll be talking to you about, which is what we call the technology diffusion, or in other words, technology adoption. Yeah, and of course, you'll get to see a different set of phases and life cycle there instead. So these are some of the keywords when it comes to maturity, growth, adoption, diffusion, S-curve, which is basically explaining to you what the shape of the curve is like. There's some aspect of product life cycle that we'll speak of about as well. And then there's a concept called technology push or market pull in this case, and these two will be discussed together. Okay. So the first thing here is there are 5 points being highlighted to you here, right? When we discuss about technology life cycle, I think when we try to plot and to see where the technology is, it very much depends on a lot of the aspects of what area and what is the period that this technology is going through. And a lot of it is related to performance. That's why one of the main keywords is being used here, the performance of the technology being plotted across a certain period of time. So based on that, you will then be much more aware in terms of whether you should invest into the technology now, whether this is something that the technology is going to do better later or not, is something to be decided across. The lifespan of various technologies can be conveniently identified as consisting of distinct stages, right? So all technologies will go throughout their life cycle, they must go through certain distinctive stages as they go on. What is the whole point of knowing about technology life cycle? These 2 words here. Strategic planning, right? It's mainly for strategic planning purposes. And when you have a much more better and deeper understanding of the life cycle, you will now be able to manage technology much more easier, right? So organizations are definitely interested in technology life cycles. The first point here says it's an alternative basically to the product life cycle theory, right? Product life cycle theories will go along very, very similar processes that you will see after this. Yeah. Describe the time and cost of developing the technology, and that's why some evaluation of the performance of the technology will be looked into. If the technology cannot perform any better, then it's basically telling the organization that in terms of you investing time and costs will also need to change accordingly, right? The timeline of course, recovering the costs and modes of making the technology will then reveal itself to you to see whether you are using the right resources, pumping in the right amount of investment, going into trying to gain more from the technology overall. Yeah. So a lot of it, why you see an icon of people here and a graph there, because then it depends on the commercial aspects of the technology. Yeah. Are there a lot of people who are still looking into it? Are there a lot of people who wants that particular technology? Is it something that's going to continue growing? Is it going to go out of the market? So that's what we are going to be discovering and going to be discussing about. Yeah. So first things first, this was something that was posted by the Washington Post. What technology world did you grow up in? So as you go down, you will start seeing that there's a lot of statistics being shared, right? So if let's say you were born in 1990, yeah, if you were born in 1990, which I think most of you are definitely a decade after that, you will see in terms of the changes of certain types of technology. So the first question here is, how did people watch videos? So we do have something called tapes back then, that then went on to DVDs, and then it went on basically over to other digital consumptions, right? Digital aspects of videos which are being created. Did people have internet access? right? So if you were born in the 1990, you realize the internet wasn't even around yet, or at least it wasn't commercially available, right? So as the time goes, yes, internet started becoming available in 93. Yeah, but as you go and you can see the speed of internet was as such, slower internet was then going out of the market. But of course, broadband and higher speed internet came along to then take over mostly. As you go down further, you can see how did people listen to music. So you see tapes again, you see CDs here, right? Interestingly, CDs are still around. There are still, I think it's becoming more of a collector's item currently and recently. But as how you will see it across digital versions of music is now taking over instead. Yeah. Did people have cell phones? So, and then you see a certain trend in terms of what when there were no cell phones to where cell phones came along and where smartphones started taking over, right? So all these are very typical in terms of you looking at how the life cycle of a technology goes through. As it is revealed down here, right down to 1985, right, when one of the first phones were being created and commercially utilized, all the way throughout the years. So this is what I was talking about, that I said in the earlier years, the shapes of our phones were varied. Yeah, there's a lot of different types of sizes that you will find from phones. But in the recent years, from 2010 onwards, if you notice here, all of our phones have been looking the same for the past decade or so, right? It's basically in this specific, as I would like to call it, a candy bar shape. Yeah. So when you start evaluating all this, you realize that the life cycle, there must be a very distinct and particular stage that it goes through. Okay. Now, looking at this table here, you need to identify that they all sit on a particular level together, right? These lines are not created just for the fun of it. That the lines are all trying to depict to you where they are at. So there are different stages, right? So these are then, this is considered one type of technology life cycle. This is a different type of technology life cycle. And this one is actually more related to the market acceptance of the technology itself. Okay. So Al Alam is saying, I can't imagine life without phones. Samuel says, I can because mine broke on the very start during the lockdown back then. Okay, all right. Anyway, embryonic stage, right? So embryonic, you see the word, I think you realize the root word here is embryo. So when you talk about embryo, it's a very initial stages of technology. So under the 4-stage technology life cycle, this is where innovation and syndication is taking place. I will tell you what innovation and syndication is after this. Yeah, when it goes through growth, in other words, the other word being used here is the diffusion stage instead. Then last but not least, there is something called the maturity stage, which a lot of times is also considered the substitution stage as well. But if you notice the third technology life cycle here, there can also be substitution, and as well as there can be an obsolescence phase as well, where technologies go obsolete. Yeah, technologies that are basically not being used as much anymore, or the usage is very minimal as we know of today. So the 4-phase life cycle is where your focus should be. Yeah, the 4-phase life cycle is where your focus should be. So you see R&D is here, the ascent phase is here, maturity, and then decline. So R&D phase, of course, most technologies will definitely be in this stage first, where it is not commercially available yet, and a lot of R&D is going into the background, right? A typical one, of course, like currently, as you can see, there's a lot of R&D going into certain types of technology. Reflect on the chapters we have covered before. Like when you look into biotech in certain areas are still in still very early in their R&D phase. Some areas of biotech, of course, has gone past and gone into other life cycles as well. The ascent phase, right? This is where you see growth. This is where you see the technology is growing. And whenever we mention the word growth, it is basically that it is very much commercially available now, and a lot of people are using it. Yeah, I'm trying to simplify this. Yeah, you can read the passages on your own, but basically here is where a lot of research and development is going through. Companies are investing a lot, but the technology is not available for everyone yet. Here it is already growing. That's why you see the word ascent, right? Ascent meaning, of course, the line starts going up. It's growing and is commercially available. More importantly, a lot of people are using it already, right? When it starts maturing, which means it reached the peak. So therefore, the line, you will notice the line starts to peak and it starts going stable again. Because it has come to a maturity level of stage, therefore, this is where you will start noticing that most people already have the technology. And in terms of the supply, it is widely available. And again, you don't necessarily see a lot of people who keeps wanting to use technology as such. Like a simple one, I would say a lot of our smartphone technology, right, is pretty much at the maturity phase. There's only some slight changes across every year that you see. They change the camera becomes better. There's more and more cameras, right? We started with 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. Now we are basically at the juncture of 4 and 5 cameras on our phone, right? So it's very much matured because then only those technologies are changing and there's only slight changes and almost everyone has a smartphone today, right? When it goes into a decline, of course, this is where technology, if you start noticing that there is a dip, there is lesser and lesser people using certain types, this type of technology currently, right? That means it's slowly moving out of the market. It's still around, it's still here in the market, but lesser and lesser people are consuming those technology. So when you see these 4 phases, right? When you see these 4 phases, I want you to reflect and to understand where do they fit in. R&D here, if you notice, hey, I don't see the word R&D here, but you should automatically relate to say that R&D is obviously in the embryonic stage. R&D is definitely within innovation and syndication. Yeah. The other word that you saw just now is ascent, because it's the line that is basically going up. That therefore it means growth, right? So ascent is basically growth. Diffusion is there. That relates towards it being commercially available and everyone is basically using it now, right? Maturity, of course, is the same here. You see the word maturity as well. And for the 4-stage technology life cycle, you see they use the term substitution. All right. Then, of course, towards the end is decline, decay phase, whereby it becomes obsolete. So in the 6 stages technology life cycle, you see the word there, obsolete. Right. So it goes through a very standard stages or phases as it goes across. So example here given technology life cycle, the phases of implementation in mobile, for example, right? In terms of what was there in phones and certain functionalities that comes along with phones, and there are some functionalities that are not there anymore as well, right? And you will notice that for some brands they do it, for some brands they don't do it. Simple example. How many of your phones now that you are using doesn't have an audio jack anymore? There's a place for you to put in your audio jack to listen to headphones or to listen to wired headphones or a speaker. You don't have that jack anymore, right? When you think about it, I know some of you will easily reflect to say that, oh, some of your phones don't have it, but some of you will still say, hey, my phones still have it, right? So those are the ones that you can see is already maturing and reaching towards the end, whereby they are abandoning jacks, audio jacks on phones already. Okay. So when you're evaluating on the S-curve is very much related to the 4-phase technology life cycle you saw earlier. So these were the first 2 words that you saw earlier that says innovation and syndication. Yeah. Removing the headphone jack was not necessary. So Muhammad is saying that. Sada is saying in mine is the same as charging port. Okay, all right. Yeah, so yours is one of those that that requires an extra adapter to be plugged into where your phone is being charged to then convert it back into an audio jack to listen. Yeah, I get what you're trying to say. All right. So innovation stage has a lot of focus on R&D. That is the main thing you need to know now. Yeah, innovation focuses a lot on R&D. And when we talk about R&D, this is where actually a lot of money is being spent. Where most money is being spent. Almost no money is coming in because now it is investment into ensuring that this technology is something that can go into the market. Yeah. Syndication, on the other hand, is where there is initial stages of the technology coming in, right? You see some demonstration, you see some aspect of commercialization, and it is normally characterized by a slow initial growth. So these 2 stages is the very beginning. You saw embryonic earlier, right? You saw the R&D level earlier. So this is where it is still very slow at the curve in the beginning, right? When you are reviewing the S-curve, this is where the early parts of the curve is. Then it starts going into growth, right? So when it's growth, look at the keyword here, acceptance of the technology itself. So more and more people see the use of the technology, they start adopting it, right? They start using it. Everyone is saying, I agree, me too. Well, the audio jack, I can tell you, it's only a matter of years when you will not see audio jacks on a particular phone anymore. I even would like to say that it will only be a matter of time where the only way that you can charge your devices will be wireless chargers. I would like to easily say that one day we will reach the point that there are no wired cables needed anymore to charge your phones. Maturity, of course, this is where it reaches that flat top, the plateau, in other words, all right? So it becomes whereby you see the technology has reached all of its limit, is being maximized, its capacity of what it can do has already reached to its particular limit. Yeah. One quick example given here is, of course, vacuum tube technology. What does that basically mean? If you remember the older screens, which are all not flat screens, and they have this really the back part of the screen is really huge, right? So those are then being referred to as vacuum tube technology. So they are hardly around anyway. So as technology reaches its mature stage, it becomes increasingly vulnerable to either of this. Either they will be substitute or they will go obsolete. Yeah, that means they are actually not being used anymore. A quick question here. So Sardar said that will not be good for me as I like to charge at the same time I'm playing PUBG. But yeah, but technologies will come along whereby you can still wirelessly charge your phone and at the same time still use it anyway. Can you identify any technologies that have reached the matured stage? Yeah, so as you can see, this is what the S-curve is all about. Yeah, this is what the S-curve is all about. When you saw the diffusion earlier, and in terms of certain R&D level, is always where the curve is. Growth is where you see the most changes in terms of the performance of the technology, in terms of the acceptance of the technology, people using it, you'll see the most here. When it's maturing, as you will see here, yeah, it can only do as much. There's nothing much of it to change anymore. And some will even go into aging or decline, where you start seeing people using lesser and lesser of it. Yeah. Good example by Asfar. Good example by Bakar. Flip phones. Are flip phones really matured? Interestingly, flip phones went into a hiatus, right? People were not into flip phones until, of course, flip phones came back into the picture, right? Samsung with their own, the Galaxy Fold. Huawei came up with their own. Nokia was even working on something. Everyone started looking at flip phones again. Keyboards, I said that was correct, fine. Smartphone to a certain extent, yes. AI, no, I don't think, wait. AI in general, maybe, but there's a lot of areas of AI that has not matured yet. Yeah, Yuan Ming? 4G is maturing, good one by Hong Jie. Typewriter, I don't think typewriter is maturing. Is typewriter still around? Can you still just go out and buy a typewriter? I highly doubt it. Radio is maturing, agreed. Smartphone again. Video games are maturing. In a way. Yes, I would agree. Video games will be maturing. Portable phones, yep. Apple Watch are maturing. Yeah, there's only slight changes in the technology now. Wired headphones, good one by Johnson as well. Jin Yan, I don't think 5G is maturing yet. There's still a lot of opportunities with it. I would still maybe put it at the end of growth if it's not in the middle of growth. Yeah. The QWERTY keyboard, exactly. Smartphone. TikTok is maturing. I'm not so sure about this. Depends on how you look at it. Yeah. AI, VR, monitors, mouse. Agreed. Monitors, yes. Mouse, yes. TVs, yes. Cameras, monitors. All right, you all get the idea. Yeah. I'm gonna skip and move on. So the reason I'm asking you this is then you will start to reflect and to think about to see whether certain technologies have come to a stage where they can only do so much, right? A lot of you said monitors, but to be fair, you should be highlighting what technologies are being used in monitors. For example, the screen that all of us have now. What do you know? What is your screen technology on your phone, right? What technology does the screen of your phone actually utilizes, right? So there's so many now. You see like something called AMOLED. You see like there are some technologies which are still on LCD. LCD, I will consider it to be a maturing technology, right? There is only so much an LCD screen can do. Are they still in the market? Yes, there are still mid-range and lower-range phones who are still using LCD on their screen as well, right? So that is also still there. Oppo Find N is so good. LED. So LED can be considered, yeah, LED can be considered as well as a maturing stage technology as well. So all of you, I think you get the idea. So when we're evaluating the S-curve, this is why they call it the S-curve. You have the initial stage, you have the growth stage, you have the maturing stage, and then you have where at some aspects, of course, it starts curving downwards. That's where it starts going into aging. All right. So you see embryonic, growth, maturity, aging. You will always see that 4 distinct stages that a S-curve will go through. Okay, so an example is here of a watch from the initial watches on how they look like and how they work as well, mechanical watches as you will see. And then watches is another example of a technology that has basically matured in terms of what it can do, right? And what it does mainly today as well. So the idea here, before I go into that, in your assignment, so this is a quick reminder. In your assignment, you are supposed to come up with identifying where is your technology, right? Is your technology in the embryonic stage? Is it in growth? Is it in maturity? Or is it in aging? Even if it's in one of these, I still want you to identify, is it in the early stage? Is it in the middle? Or is it late? Right? Yeah. Please listen to that again. Yeah. If you have identified and to say, okay, our technology is in growth, I want you to still identify whether it is in the early stages of growth, in the middle stages of growth, or in the late stages of growth. If some of you have decided to say, actually, our technology is still very new, it's still very early, it's still considered in the embryonic stage. And once you have decided that, I still want to know, is it in the early embryonic stage? Is it in the middle? Or is it in the late embryonic stage? Yeah. So after you have identified which phase it is in, I still want you to further identify in detail, where do you think it is? Don't worry, this is going to be a mixture of your own research and a bit of your opinion, right? Because I know this is where your own analysis must come into the picture. Why do you feel that it is in the middle of growth? Why do you feel that it is in the late embryonic stage? Why do you feel that it is in the early mature stage? So finalize on one and explain that part of it. Yeah. Sada says, is late including maturity and decline both? Is late including? Okay, so Sada is getting me wrongly. So Sada, when I said early, middle, and late, this applies to each phase. Embryonic will have its early, middle, and late. Growth will have its early, middle, and late. Maturity will have its early, middle, and late as well. Yeah. Aging as well is the same thing. You can identify that this technology is in its early aging stages, or is it in the middle aging stages, or is it at the end of the aging stage? All right. Shami says, technically late embryonic is just early growth. So like I said, it's going to be a combination of your own research plus your justification and your own analysis of it. Yeah, so combine those two together. Don't worry. I will accept it as long as when you're explaining it, it is based on some research and facts that you have found. Okay. And Sada says, okay, so I think I shall move on. So the whole reason that we are identifying this S-curve is, as you can notice, why is this so important to companies? Because companies need to know if the technology has reached, as Shahmi is trying to say, late growth and early maturity. Yeah, the company needs to prepare. The company cannot just allow their product to go into aging without introducing another technology to come in and take place. which will always mean that it must have better and higher performance. You can reflect, and when I use smartphones, I think all of you will easily get it, because you notice the storage of phones keep increasing, the RAM of phones keep increasing, the capacity of phones are also slowly increasing. When we first started, it was only about 2,000 milliamp or 1,000 milliamp. Now we are at 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 milliamp. And that's where you see the performance becomes better and better. With every generation of a technology that comes into the picture, it's supposed to make it better as well, right? So that's why it shows you here that when it comes to a particular limit of a specific technology, there are two things that can be done whereby you are trying to improve that technology so that it does better. So you see another line here, right? Is for it to be doing better. Or even easier, you just come up with another product or another line of the product to then create a totally new line instead. Yeah. So as you can see here, a newer technology, which is B, the red line, has a higher limit of performance for the same parameter. So what does that mean is that at this particular line here, it already has a higher performance than any of this white lines that is being shown. So a different technology will come over and to basically take over in a way. So I hope by now you can understand and to see why is this important for companies, because then they want to continue doing better. And the only way it is being seen that the company is doing better is whereby their devices and their products are basically performing better. Okay. The last part of this lecture is covering this area of it, technology life cycle and the market growth. Okay. Rather than you just see the S curve earlier, where it normally stops around here, right? You notice this one goes all the way until the end, until where the line goes back right down to zero. Because you don't see performance anymore on the left here, you start seeing market volume, which means the amount of people who are using it. Okay, so this technology life cycle, you have to differentiate it from the earlier life cycle that we see. And the main difference is that the earlier life cycle, you will notice that there is no line that goes all the way back down to zero. But this one, you notice the line goes back all the way down to zero. And I've just highlighted why. You're not talking about technology performance anymore. You're talking about market volume. You're talking about how many people are still using it, right? So when you're talking about how many people are still using it, there will be a chance where the technology will come to a point whereby no one is using it anymore. Yeah. And that's where you will easily see it goes back right down to zero. So I see Sardar mentioning in the chat, so it all depends on the innovation of the company in new products and the existing tool. Exactly, definitely, right? And how much do they want to push that line as well? Look at this line again, yeah? Look at these multiple lines again. If the next technology B that comes along after A, right? If the company pushes this too high up, right? You notice they don't want to do that as well. Why? Because then they are pushing it too far, and they will be stuck with needing to do even better later on. So you notice that you will definitely notice with all the generations of our phones that we have today, it's always a slight improvement, so that they can come up with more generations. And obviously, why companies do that is so that they can make more money long term. Right? They do not want to suddenly improve their technology so revolutionary, because then once they do that, what is our expectation for the year after? They need to do even better than that, right? And when they do only slightly better than that later on, then we will start saying that, oh, the company is not doing much and blah, blah, blah. So that's why you always notice it will always be just, okay, it's just enough to then at least say that they did better than last year. It's just enough to say that they did better than last year, yeah? So this one has 6 phases. So you need to be clear with all the 6 phases that is being shown here. The earlier phases, to be honest, A, B, C, D is still similar to what we saw earlier with the S curve. Yeah, it's still similar. Technology development phase, R&D is all here. Yeah, the early embryonic stage, which is what is called here, application launch phase. So it's just being launched. People start knowing about it. Not everyone is convinced about it yet, but there are slowly people who are adopting it. Then it goes into growth. So growth, all of you are familiar. This is where the line is the most steep, right? It's the highest level of growth basically there. And of course, when it goes into maturity, so that's why D, you see they use the same word here, is maturity. E is when the technology is now slowly being substituted because there's something better in the market already, right? And then F is where the technology moves out of the market and is basically being replaced. All right. So as you go into it, the market, early stages, of course, market does not recognize the technology because it's still going R&D, it's not available even, right? At this stage, because R&D is being done, there's a lot of prototypes, there's a lot of testing happening. So obviously, this is where technology development is going on. Application launch. So this is the very early aspect of the technology overall, where you will notice that it's characterized by a slow initial growth, which will then be followed by a rapid growth because the line starts becoming steeper and steeper, which will then go into what we call the application growth. All right. This is where penetration into market will depend on the rate of innovation and the market needs for the new technology. I will always like to say this is also very much depending on the marketing of the technology. Yeah, how is it being marketed to the customers as well? What is this? So this curve is for Nokia. Not exactly, Sardar. Nokia has not gone back down to zero yet. There are still a lot of people using Nokia products, yeah, by the way, and Nokia is still creating new generations of technology. Don't believe me, search online. There's still a lot of Nokia models available. Samuel, I think he said, I think one of the longest mature tech is motor vehicles. Agreed, right? So that's a good point by Sam as well. When you reach the mature line, right, and it becomes a bit more straighter, there are a lot of technologies that just continue being straight there, and they just continue being straight every single year, right? Because they're still around, people are still using them, and they haven't gone down into aging yet. So mature technology, this is where the growth rate. So slows, market volume has reached its peak. Everyone already has one, everyone is using it. It doesn't do anything else further anymore. That is basically its function that is available. Now, this too is the one that is additional. If you notice from the earlier one, other than seeing the first 4 stages, you see substitution and obsolescence here. Substitution obviously is whereby a better technology comes along and everyone moves on to that. Obsolescence is, of course, then talking about the technology moving totally out of the market and no one is using it anymore. Yeah. I love Nokia 3310. Oh, really? That was my very first phone anyway. Quick question. Will maturing technology always be substituted before going obsolete? So you saw the last curve that goes all the way right down back to zero, right? Will it always be substituted before going obsolete? So think about that. So must the technology be substituted first before the technology can become obsolete? That is the question. So the answer is either a yes or a no. I didn't realize this is blended into the background. Is it a yes? Is it a no? Or is it it depends on the situation? I wanted to ask some of you this question, but I realized we are a bit short of time. I'm not going to spend doing that, but I want to see from everyone. So 12 of you said yes, 22 of you, there's only 30 plus of you then. 12 of you said yes, 22 of you said it depends. All right. So the answer here is that there has been technologies that when they reach, I'm going to go back to the graph for a while, yeah. There are technologies that when they reach this phase, right, when they reach this phase, they don't necessarily get substituted, they just go straight into obsolete. Yeah, so which means you have technology that there is no substitution needed and they just basically go straight into obsolescence, whereby they go straight out of the market. Yeah. Search and find out what a Tamagotchi is. Tamagotchi. I'm not sure how many of you know this. Tamagotchi. I've just typed it into the chat. So if you search for that particular technology, it is one example of it wasn't substituted at all. When it went into after it went into maturity, it just went straight out of the market. No one wants it anymore. No one uses it anymore. But when it was around, when it was first introduced, I can tell you almost everyone had one. Yeah, almost everyone were going through that particular phase. I think that only occurs when there is suddenly no need or demand of it. Yeah. My main point to deliver to you here is to say that there can be technologies who go through that. So it doesn't mean every technology after they mature, this slide, right? After they mature, it doesn't mean that they must go through substitute before they go obsolete. There is a chance that for them, for the technology after they mature, they can actually go straight to obsolete and just go out of the market. Yeah. So to be fair, of course, we are talking about this phase, which is technology adoption overall. So life cycle will always have multiple generation. I've highlighted a bit to you just now, right? Most technology will have multiple generations of that technology. So that's very common. Okay, all right. I'm gonna go next because some other chatting stuff is going on there. So this is a very typical example when you look at technology generations. Yeah. So as you can see, 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G. Can you basically say that all the previous generations doesn't exist anymore? Not necessarily, right? 3G is very much still available. Every time you see an E on your phone when the connection is not so good and it drops down to something called an E, that's called edge. Yeah, and that is still very much on 3G, for example. Yeah, between 3G and 4G, and some is basically between 2 to 3G as well. So even though there's already further generations of the technology that existed, the early generations have been around as well. Okay. So Wei Huan is saying, why Malaysia switch off 3G? Because they are, for many different reasons around it. Improving the infrastructure is one of the main reasons as well. But to be honest, it is more of a good thing for them to do that now. And I don't want to go into that for now, Wei Huan. If you want, you can come and talk to me later about it. But it's quite a long story behind it. But anyway, another example of Intel processors, right? You see, they have so many, they even call it by generation now because they don't want to bother coming up with so many numbers and different names and so on and so forth. So even though it is i3 and i5 and i7 and i9, but each of them has a generation that they have gone through as well, right? Earlier, they have all gone through the 9th generation. Now they're at the 10th generation, for example, right? Every iPhone from the 2G all the way to the 12 Pro Max, and of course now we have the 13 Pro as well, right? So when you see in terms of the generations of the technology and what it does and what it can do, that is where generations of technology has taken place. All right. Now, this concept here that talks about the technological push is basically trying to get you to understand. I'll show you the graph instead. So there are two different concepts here that you need to understand. One is the science technology push, meaning the technology is doing better, right? The technology is doing better because of the science technology push. So what does that mean? For example, our phones are getting faster, right? Our phone's battery capacity is getting bigger, even though our phones are not necessarily getting bigger because the efficiency of the battery technology that is using as well, right? All those are generally being supported by the science technology push, right? Which basically means that the research is being done. Scientifically, this is something that we can use to improve the technology. So the push of the technology to do better is because of science and technology research. On the other hand, you will notice that some technology can do better, right? Some technology can basically, some areas of technology can basically do better, not because the science and technology research is pushing it, but the market is pulling it. That means there is much more demand for it instead. A very typical example of this is our vaccines that we have now for COVID. How long would it have taken to create a vaccine? I think you have heard about all those news as well, right? A typical amount of time to create a vaccine, if you follow normal science and technology push research and development, it will take many, many years to create the vaccine. However, because of market pull instead, because the people really needs it, that duration has been shortened. So the technology of our vaccines suddenly can do so much and do much better now because of the market pool, right? So the graph basically tells you in terms of when technology and market is interacting, yeah, whether a technology can do better and to perform better is very much depending on either one of this perspective. One is whereby enough R&D is pushing it to do better, or there's enough demand to make sure it basically works better and it basically does better. Yeah. So as I highlighted earlier, the vaccine is actually a very typical example. Let me just see. I think I will. All right, I'm going to skip this question. Sadar is saying there is so much pressure on science. Oh well, that will always be there. Yeah. So on the left you see science and technology push. On the right you see the market pull. You will notice that the reasons are very different. Here is because they find out something new. Why are there so many companies that are going into space exploration and space technology? Because based on those scientific discoveries, they can actually come back and then do something here and then create better products and better solutions, for example. Yeah, because a lot of R&D, there's intellectual capital, because there is a knowledge into the area. That's why it pushes for innovation. On the other hand, innovation can be pulled by market as well. Why? Just because the market demanded, just because people want to do that, want to use it, and so on and so forth, right? The COVID, I think, is a very, very typical situation to use. Yeah. Did we all need to use masks before? No, we don't need to. But now we need to use masks. And because of the market demand and market pull, there's so many different types of masks available, right? Look at the generations of masks that has changed as well. We have the typical surgical mask, as they call it. Now there's so many, there's KF94, KN94, 95, and something like that, right? There's so many different range of masks as well. One of your foundation lecturers, Mr. Danish, I'm not sure if you have met him as well. Have you seen him with his mask going around? He's wearing this really cool steampunk looking, to me, it looks steampunk to me in terms of a mask walking around as well. And there's so many variations of it. And to me, masks were around more related towards the market pull because the market demand is there. There's only a bit of science and technology push towards a product like that, for example. Yeah. So when you compare this side by side, the description, I can leave it for you to read it on your own. I would rather look at this and compare it on your end. Now, remember, yeah, your research for this weekly task is relating to technology lifecycle phase. Yeah, so that's why you saw this earlier. The R&D, embryonic, early stage, the innovation and diffusion stage is there. Ascent is growth. Then there is maturity, and then there is decline. Yeah, so you need to identify where your technology sits within this particular life cycle. Yeah, respirators are better. Pushing for vaccine. Now there is 4-layer mask, and next time, yeah, I think that will never end as well. More and more layers. So when you reflect this on a product life cycle, right, you will notice the similarities. They have introduction, they have growth, they have maturity and decline as well. So they're actually very closely related to each other, and they tend to follow that similar curve as well. So if you notice here, R&D happens here, right, because it's not available to everyone yet. Then the growth starts going up, it starts maturing, and then it goes into a decline. Product life cycle, same thing. It goes introduction, growth, maturity, and decline as well. All right. So there's a lot of similarities when you try to look into the distinct stages of its own. Last but not least, this is the last part, is talking about adoption of technology, right? There is a category, there's an amount of a category of different types of users when it comes to technology. And even though a technology can be in different parts of the life cycle, you still need to understand that it still depends on the users. Yeah, some users can be stuck with the earlier technology and they can become very comfortable with the technology, and yet they still get what they want from the technology, even though the technology has progressed and moved further on and so on and so forth. This is where this is how the adopters, the people who are using the technology, are being differentiated. All right. So you have the innovators, as you can see in the early stages here. Who are the innovators? These are the people that if any new technology comes along, you will always see them basically being one of the first who would like to get into it and to obtain and get their hands on that technology. Yeah. And of course, in this case here, these are normally talking about very significant technological developments. Early adopters, on the other hand, right, a slightly bigger group, and of course, they are the ones that then are a bit more. They are the follow-up of those people who are in innovators who will then basically take up and adopt the technology. This is the early majority. A lot of these people here is a bit of a wait and see, yeah, because they have heard of the technology and so on. Then they're like, okay, I will join in because then I know that this works. There are evidence of it. There's a lot of reviews online already, so they join in. Some people are the late majority. To them, they don't believe in all this. They don't believe in, oh wow, iPhone 13 is out. You know, it's something that we have to get onto it. Not necessarily. They need a lot of convincing when new technology comes into the picture. Last but not least, of course, the ones which are actually against all of this technology, to them, they just want to be laggards towards the end. Yeah, I see a lot of things going on in the chat. It's something I just wanted to share. Yeah, I just saw that, so I will ignore it as well. We are nowhere near there. I guess if the technology is similar, it's a different story. All right, moving on. So that you can relate to this technology adoption life cycle, we are almost at the end. Yeah, sorry to take a few more minutes of your time. When it comes to smartphone, which are you? Are you one of those innovators where it's very early, you would want to get hold of some form of technology, and or are you one of those which are early adopters, right? You will follow along that line and always trying to get your hands on new technology? Or are you early majority, whereby you normally wait out a bit, right? You want to hear some reviews, you want to see whether the phone is good or not. So a lot of the early adopters and innovators will either come up with blogs, like you see all these YouTubers, right? They are what I call the innovators and early adopters. They get the technology, they start reviewing it. Then most of the people will always fall into early majority because they want to see all these reviews. They want to look at it first. Then they will start getting onto the bandwagon and say, okay, I will get a new phone. Late majority doesn't give a damn, actually. For them, it's just that you need to really convince me to get onto it. I know a lot of these people, late majority. Like, for example, I have a group of friends who will want to buy, like iPhone 13 is around, came up a few months ago, right? This is the time they will choose to buy iPhone 12 because they feel that, well, I don't need to really jump on it. And iPhone 12 has basically dropped in terms of the pricing because it's the previous model. And you do have quite a significant group of people who are those as well. Of course, I'm assuming none of you in class are laggards. Laggards are normally like maybe the older generations who really don't see a need of oh really, I need a faster phone. Not exactly. I only use it for calling and FaceTime and phone calls, video calls and stuff and so on. Yeah. So where do you sit in? All right. So as we can see here, there's two of you who are laggards. So you don't mind just sitting in the background kind of thing and not really adopting technology as you go. All right, awesome. 50 of you have responded. So I want you to look at this line. Yeah, look at this line in class because there are 66 of you here. And guess what? You are following exactly this life cycle that you see here, right? Because this is the technology adoption life cycle. There are many different types of people around. Even though all of you are from a very similar generation, even you will fall into these categories. You are not necessarily, not all of you will want to be early adopters and innovators. Like new technology comes along, you want to get your hands on it. As you can see, not everyone does that, right? And most of us are definitely here. You are definitely, I will fall into probably early adopter more than early majority, right? If I can get hold of the technology, whenever the opportunity is there, I will definitely do so. Yeah. Another way of looking at this is definitely those of you who changes your devices or changes your phones enough, and it depends on the reason you're doing it as well. Yeah. All right. Okay. Awesome. So we are done. And it's officially 6:36. All right, so I'm covering power and energy sources next week. Next week is crucial, yeah? Next week's lecture is crucial. You skip next week's lecture, you skip the class test next week, you have to apply for EC, you have to do a lot of things, by the way, yeah? Because it is not just simply you skipping class next week for whatever the reason that you have and then coming to me, hi, sir, sorry, I couldn't attend the class test. I'm free now. I'm free next week. Can we just do the class test then? It is not as simple as that. Yeah, because obviously, you know, I have to recreate and create another class test just for you. So that will all take time, and let's not get into those situations. Yeah, for those of you who are not in class and you're watching this video recording later, do or die be in class next Thursday, because after that you will be having your 2 weeks break anyway. Yeah. All right. So just a reminder about that, and let's move on to your attendance. I will just need to move the timing a bit. Oops, 4:45. Okay. All right, so Sadara says, I notice when we answer, we get coins. What to do with them? There's not really anything that you can do with them. It's just a matter of you knowing in terms of, like for lectures, honestly, those questions are not really to evaluate whether you're right or wrong, yeah? Muhammad Bakar is asking, are all the chapters until today work included in the class text next week? Good question. You are absolutely right. That is why I'm covering technology lifecycle today. Yeah, everything, all the chapters before until technology lifecycle is covered in your class test. Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Stay safe. I'll see all of you, next week.
Sir.
Yep.
Yeah, can you check if my attendance is working? Because I can't sign in.
You can't sign in.
Sorry,
Okay,
I
all right.
I can't mark it.
All right, I will try checking that. Some of your classmates are still doing it, so I need
Okay,
to wait.
I'll wait.
Take care, Ran. Take care. Take care. See you. Thank you. Thank you.
Sir, sorry for disturbing.
Yes.
Sir, the test, are they MCQs?
10 MCQ, 1 essay. Short essay.
Oh, one. Try to say. All right, sir. Thank you very much.
All right. Shami, Jeff, a good day to you as well.
Thank you, sir. Have a nice day.
All right, you too. Bye. Off to dinner. It's going to be 7 p.m. already. All right. I need to end the call because I need to be somewhere as well. Take care, everyone. I will just quickly check on Asfar's. No, Asfar, your attendance is fine if you're still here, though.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, okay. All right, then, everyone, take care. Only one person is absent here. It looks like Anka Singh, and everyone else is fine. I will end the meeting now. Take care and stay safe.